All righty. I think, okay, there we go. Yep. How's it going, everybody? Let me fix this right quick. Um, I did a video until until I can get the chat and people know that I'm live. Um, I did a subject yesterday, or actually last night, or I guess this morning, early this morning, about we're starting a record label or talking about starting a recording studio business. And should you let me fix, I don't know, that looks kind of smudgy. So that, I don't know if the camera angle, I don't know. Let me turn on this light too. This might help. This might help. All right, that might help. Okay. Um, I did a video earlier, and I was getting people's opinion on should you start a commercial studio building. And a lot of people, well, I ain't gonna say a lot of people. I got a few comments, and a lot of people said, in their opinion, they don't think it's worth it. I'm gonna use Cliff. Cliff um, wrote on the comments. It's just the overhead, and overhead meaning not just the personnel, but we're talking about the bills and expenses, such as your monthly utilities, your lights, your water, your insurance, as well as paying the staff. Because most commercial studios have they're going to have your studio manager, your studio engineers, your studio maintenance team. There's assistant engineers. You might have interns. We usually don't have to worry about paying interns, but there's still assistant engineers. There are engineers. If you have hired engineers, then there's the cost of repairing and replacing gear, buying gear, and then it's just the cost of promotion to promote the business, the cost of trying to get people to build clients and then trying to get return clients, trying to get rid of some bad clients, and then trying to recruit good clients. And there are pros and cons to a commercial studio, and there can be pros and cons to a home studio because the only really con to a home recording studio, well, there's two cons to a home recording studio. The only two cons to a home recording studio would be if you have the room. If you have the room. Now, if you have the room, then that con goes away. That negative, that's not a bad thing. But if you don't have the room and you need the room, especially if you're trying to record a band or something like that, then that could be a problem. The only other con negative is if you're trying to get artists to come to your home recording studio, unless your home recording studio looks like a professional commercial studio building. And there are some people who have home recording studios that made their home look like a commercial building studio. That has money, but it can be done. It definitely can be done. It would, and then you post your pictures to make your home recording studio look like that environment. Um, then I personally think that it would be a lot easier if you're going to get big name clients. Some of your big name clients out there still that are out there, if you're going to try to track those, if you're interested in trying to make money in a recording studio business, because even the ones that have commercial studio buildings that have them already built and ready to go are competing. But artists, even though the artists, we can have name all your big name artists. A lot of the artists don't want to still spend those kind of budgets to go to these big expensive commercial studios. They're just used to it. They expect, every time they record a project, about $100,000, whatever. They're just used to it. But someone who has a home recording studio, and let's say they built it, and it looks like a commercial facility, like any other commercial facility in their home. The problem is that for the home recording studio, it might be, what is your reputation? Because sometimes these artists don't want to take a chance on someone who doesn't have a reputation of doing, they don't have a reputation. You might not have the reputation to be able to create a product that they're used to getting for their album. So it really, really depends on the home. But what I like about the home recording studio is the fact that I can come in my own home recording studio and do it whenever I want. So I can put my glasses on because I got some people chiming in. So, hey, Rock, how's it going? Hey, hello. What's going on? Mark. Hello, Mark. How you doing, Mark? His name was Mark, too. Thanks for y'all for tuning in. What I'm talking about is it worth opening up a commercial studio, or even is it worth starting a record label? That's what I'm talking about. So sometimes I think we all like the fact that, a home recording studio has so many benefits to the people that own the home recording studio are trying to do it at home. We have a ton of benefits. It can be, most of us are working. Some of them are not. Some people are fortunate to be living without having to work. But it's nice to be able to come into your home recording studio anytime you want. You don't have to book it. You don't have to worry about being on a clock. You can just create anytime you want. That's the great thing about having a home recording studio. Like I said, the only downside to a home recording studio, if you're trying to draw in clients, it's easy to draw in independent, unknown clients. I'm talking about the clients, like if you have a home recording studio, your chances of getting a Justin Timberlake, an Adele, Katy Perry or whatever, Pink, rock, it could be a rock band, it could be a country band, it would be a lot harder if they're already a well-named. Like, for example, I'm in Tennessee, so there are a lot of, I'm outside of Nashville. I'm actually about 45 minutes northwest of Nashville. So it's a lot easier to get independent artists that are trying to be country and Western artists that don't want to spend the Nashville studio prices. But these would be unknown. Now, if I was trying to do Taylor Swift, Carrie Underwood, it's funny. Well, I'll talk about that later. But anyhow, so let me read some post a couple comments. Mark said, you need the reputation, but obviously definitely need the skill too. The big names out there hire talent. Yep, that's what I mean. Rock says, you have so much freedom for creativity in your home studio. Yep, both of those are true. Now, I'll go back to the commercial studio. Believe it or not, you can do a studio tour, a commercial studio tour right now. And we're talking the ones that already had commercial studios and they've been around for years. Even with the pandemic, when COVID hit, that killed even a lot of those studios, because those studios still have staff. Especially you got a facility like Blackbird, who's got 9 live room and 9 control rooms, and a master room. His facility is big. But when you don't have the clients coming in, bringing in $50,000 to $100,000 advances from record labels, I'm talking 10, 12, 15 clients monthly. And you were, 12-hour sessions where you're used to getting $50,000 to $100,000 a pop. That really starts to hurt. Now you got to, we can only open up maybe 1 or 2 control rooms. That can hurt the business when you're paying $3,000, $4,000 a month in just the mortgage, maybe. maybe, and that's not including the lights, water, gas, maintenance, and the staff. You still got studio managers, maintenance teams. Now you got to start cutting hours. You got to, and hopefully you can get some books, some time or whatever. And on top of that, don't get me wrong, as many of the commercial studios I've been in a few. The atmosphere of walking into that commercial studio and you start seeing all those artists and their platinum albums on the wall, it does give you this, it's like an aura, like like this, wow, it does do that, especially the way the facility is built. It does do that. But what I do like about, whether people see when I do my videos, they see most of the time I'm downstairs in that front room. That's a lot smaller setup, or every now and then, of course, people see I'm up here. This room alone gives me more of that vibe of walking into that commercial studio. Somewhat, it does give me that more of a vibe. What I like about doing is just like what Rock just said. You have so much freedom, and creativity to do it in your home studio. You do. And like Mark was saying, he's saying you need, the reputation, and you do, because like I said, it's going to be a lot harder to get clients if they don't trust your skill set. If you don't have a reputation, they don't know. They like, I don't know, especially if they're trying to make it at a certain level. And that's the biggest thing. Let me see what else. Let me put my glasses. I'm kind of blind. Big names out there hire talent. Yep. That's why they hire big studios, because they're willing to take a risk on a commercial facility. But you got a lot of these clients that have built their own home recording studios too. Believe it or not, you may not think so, but a lot of them have. So a lot of them are doing it. Big clients are doing their own home recording studios. So I like, once again, plus, if you really think about it, when I say commercial studio, when I was doing a video on opening up a home recording studio or open up a commercial facility, most of us have never really thought about the cost and the time frame. The average time frame, believe it or not, to build a top state-of-the-art commercial facility can take months. It could take months. And even when you get, let's look at what it would, let's say we're going to open a commercial studio and you were going to do it like all commercial studios have done. You're going to build rooms within rooms. They're going to have, well, this is a room where there's space between a room, because that creates isolation. And it's the same concept if you look at a movie theater. You ever go to a movie theater and wonder why you can go to a movie theater or cinema and they can have a theater 1, theater 2, theater 3. They can have 3 separate feature films going. And you go into theater 1 and you can't even hear theater 2. Well, that's because the rooms are separated and there's air gaps between the rooms. And these are rooms within the rooms, inside the building. And that's how they get that isolation, sound isolation. Then they have all this sound absorption and all this acoustic treatment, so you can sit in, no matter where you sit in that theater, you're going to get this amazing sounding. You're going to hear the low end thumb rumble of the subs for the low end. You're going to hear all this dynamic surround sound, 5 or 6, 7, 8 surround sound system to give you that experience. Well, the rooms have to be acoustically treated. They're specific like that. So next time you ever get a chance to really wonder acoustic, go to a movie theater, and before they watch the movie, they have the lights dimmed down, but just take a really good look at the rooms. You'll notice that the ceilings are all set. It'll be that angle and then another angle and another angle, and they're never square. They're always like at certain angles, and then there's a lot of carpeting and so forth. It's the way the rooms are. Well, commercial studios are pretty much built somewhat similar to that, but they're more designed for recording. They're going to have isolation booths. They'll have gobos, which are like the ice. They look like gobos are nothing but sound separators in the live room, so you can create these separations of sound between players. You know, one guy has an amp over here or whatever. You have another a gobo and another separation, so that way you're not bleeding, especially when they're setting up the mics. But the way the live room works, it works well, especially for live recording, live, acoustic orchestras, bands. It works well. That's the reason why it works well. It's not necessarily needed if you're using VST instruments. You're going to use plugins, VST plug-in instruments, synthesizers that have a ton of sound. Like I got a ton of synthesizers, and I got a ton of VST plug-in sounds. It's not necessary because that stuff is being directly fed it in. But look at what would it cost to build that? Now these guys are going to have to build. Sometimes a lot of times they'll build echo chambers. The best sounding reverb chambers are actual real chambers, believe it or not. Look what it costs to build plate and echo chambers and things like that. It can get expensive running the wire, because you're going to have to run mic lines, tie lines, all these lines that are going to have to feed into control. But the live rooms, especially if you have multiple live rooms and multiple control rooms, a lot of those are feed to each control room. So you got to tie each room to each control room to all the different live rooms, and you got to run speakers and microphone plugs and all that. You're talking, sometimes this can get up to kilometers length in cabling. So Mark says, I feel like we're in a traditional phase for a whole new competitive environment for artists and recording engineers with social media. Oh yeah, on the with social media, with the internet altogether. The internet altogether is the game changer, because the internet can be accessed by anyone. It doesn't matter how you pronounce that. Anyone can access the internet, right? Which means anyone can access to the internet to get to listen to music, watch videos, like people watching my YouTube video now. This was not possible without the internet. See, you needed the radio, you needed TV, you needed music video to be able to get access. That opened the gate. So that's the reason why it's like anything else. It's bound to, because things would have stayed the way they were had it not been for the internet. Let me read the next question. Let's see. With everything becoming more accessible and less expensive for people, all the talent out there in the past that may have been not discovered have way more opportunity now. This is very, very true. This is very, very true. Because there's no gatekeepers. Like I said before, if you go the old traditional route, and we're switching to record label right quick before I go back to the commercial studios. Record labels was, you had to get exposure. If you get exposure, that allows someone to see you, hopefully an A&R rep, because those are the main ones that would talk to the labels of getting you a record deal. Or hopefully you would get exposure and you would be in a band and you would find your manager that knew A&R reps of record labels that could get you a record deal. The problem with a record deal only, the only downside to record deal is that they were always in favor the record labels more than the artists. The artists just saw record deals, record contract. What a recording artist didn't know is they were basically being contract to create sound recording masters that are going to be owned by the label. So they're thinking all this music I'm doing is mine. No, all that music you're doing is theirs. You just got credit for doing it. That's really so. And then you had to go and tour, and the record labels would have the contract. Well, okay, if you can tour using our music, that's really, it sounds shady because it is shady, but that's really what it is. I'll hire you. Excuse my nose itch. I hire you. You can sing, you can go create music for us. We'll let you use it and you'll be able to tour with it and make money. But all the money from the mechanical royalties, sound recordings, are going to own, we're going to own. And we're going to own at least 80% of it. We know that you're not going to always make enough money off touring. So we'll give you, I don't know, 2 or 3 points, 3 points or whatever. You know, at 8 cents a point, 3 times 8 is 24. 24 cents out of a $10 CD, you'll get 24 cents of it. You do the math. We sell 100,000 copies. You'll get that amount. But the downside was that whatever money you made, how many units it sold, you get that 24 cents off the $10. You multiply 10 times 500,000 units. That money that you get has to pay the artist manager, business manager, the road manager, the lawyers, and you got to split based on the split sheets. So that was the only downside, but it did work because a lot of artists didn't make a whole lot of money. Most artists, even the mega stars that we've always known, didn't start off with big money. Prince didn't start that way. Michael Jackson's first albums didn't start that way. He didn't become a megastar until Thriller. That was he was working on his fourth album before he became a megastar. So Thriller did it because Michael Jackson didn't get big off of Thriller, he didn't get Living Off the Wall. And before that, Thriller is what set Michael Jackson to go, because of the Thriller album. And then he came out with the Bad album and so forth. Same thing with Prince. A lot of people think Prince, 1999, all that, but Prince didn't really blow up. Prince had controversy. If you go back in the 70s, listen to controversy, Prince's earlier stuff. He wasn't big then. 1999 was what shot him up, Same thing with Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson didn't blow up until, for her first album. She did that, what they call it, the bubblegum, before she hooked up with Jimmy Jam. Most artists that are big names didn't start off big. Whitney Houston didn't. Most of the time, most artists that have a first album, their first album didn't blow them up, usually about the third and fourth. But the record labels knew how to market because they talk to all the record labels, all the radio stations. And that's the only ones that could really, at that time, could talk to the radio stations to get their stuff played. Independents had 2 problems as an independent record label and all that. Getting radio play and distribution. And that's why they was like, well, the only way we're going to really get big is to get on the radio, get a music video, and try to get some distribution. So the record labels, the big names, the majors had that locked. So that was the big deal. Oh man, get throat dry. So the internet changed everything, just like Napster changed the purpose of buying music. People are like, why do we have to keep buying music? I can just use Napster, BearShare, all these different downloadings. I can just download it. And of course, the RIA and all these other friends said, no. We're gonna kill this pirating thing. We're gonna go after you for copyright infringement. You keep downloading music illegally. So that became an issue, the downloading. But I would say what's great about the internet, and thank God for the internet, because it's the YouTube. And because without YouTube, I wouldn't have a channel. So with that being said, so now some artists feel that there are artists I feel that the record labels, are really not making any money. So a lot of record labels started closing. It used to be a lot of them. Now it's down to 3 major corporations. What is it? Universal, Warner Brothers, and Sony Music Group, right? They bought up all these record labels to fall under their because the Universal Music Group is also Universal for making movies. You notice these are corporations like Sony Music Group is also the pioneers of making electronics. So, they're big, so they can afford to buy, because they got, they're making money from all their electronics and everything else. The cameras, Sony cameras. And of course, Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is known for making movies. So they can buy Warner Brothers, they can buy the music part. And they all got smart, because here's the thing with these three reasons why they really took an interest, the corporates. They call them the suits, right? Corporate suits, the suits. The reason why they wanted an interest in the music, because it makes it easier for them to be able to have catalogs for them to start publishing companies, so they can use music that come from all these artists for catalogs for their movies. Because artists sign with, it doesn't matter if you sign with Capitol, Epic, Arista, or whatever. One of those fall under those three groups. Music, sound recording, all that belong to the publishing. It's going to be on the record label. And if you sign up your publishing, they own the publishing. So now they can go to their publishing company and use the music. So that's why the artists didn't really make any money creating the music, because the record label's on it and they can use it to sync it everywhere else. This is why publishing is so important, because your music not only makes music for you to make money, for you to make the music off of CD sales, you make money having your music used in different venues, such as TV commercials, video games, movies. This is called sync licensing, right? So your music make money for you that way. Also, your music make you money not only just for CD sales, but it also makes you money when you tour, because people buy your touring tickets, right? So this is the reason why they want to own the publishing. Mofolo. I hope I'm saying it right. Yep. Well, that's true too. He said it is a gatekeeper. He said, but it also, Mofolo said, it flooded the market with subpar talent. Well, yeah, because one thing about gatekeeper, like when I was in the Army, we had this thing before the helicopters would fly, you had to be what they called QCs, which stand for quality control. Quality control would make sure stuff would work so the helicopter don't fail. This is why 90% of the time helicopters fly with no problem, because it's QC. Things are QC. These quality controls, like anything that comes off an assembly line, there is a quality control. Well, the record labels would have quality control. So that's how they would make sure. They want to make sure they're not putting out garbage, but unfortunately some it is hit or miss on what because there's so many different genres. In my opinion, some of the subpar have gotten through anyway. And then we're looking at some of those 80s artists, and some of them were subpar. But I'm laughing because some of the subpar music were still number one hits, and then some people were just one hit wonders. It's just anyhow. So yeah. So let me see what Mark says. He says, let me see. Subpar talents have always been there and cause you to have to dig a little harder to find what you want. But with the top performers out there, they're only get better because they have to compete with more people. But also, I think when we talk about the best talent, and I would use an R&B singer like Luther Vandross, or I would use groups like Chicago, where they had the lead singer was Peter Cetera. I would use when we had Steve Perry was singing lead for Journey. I would use Michael Jackson. I would use Prince. I would use, because I'm not gonna knock that. Sometimes the music can be a niche that it can overflood subpar singers, and you may agree, you don't have to agree, but Paula Abdul and Madonna has always been subpar singers. You're not going to listen to those artists sing a cappella tracks. They're just not. but the music is so good. What's great about, and I would say what was great about the 80s music and 70s, I would say 70s, 80s, and I would say 70s, 80s music and 90s was that one song did not sound like another song. And some songs, because these songs sounded so good, I was listening to I'm Only Human by the Human League. And then I was also listening to that song called You Know It's True by, I think it's called something ballad something. You know that girl is true. Bah, 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 bah. That song doesn't sound nothing like I'm only human, born to make mistakes. Those are two totally different sounding songs. What's nice about it is I can listen to, then I can go back and listen to a song by Level 42. There's something about you, baby. Every song, or you can go into that song sounded another like Let's Dance. Put on your red shoes and dance the blues. Let's dance. Those, every sound, that's what made the 80s so great. Because whether there were some people that, there were some subpar singers out there like Devo, blast that whip. The thing is that everybody created a unique type of song that sounded nothing like someone else's song. That's what I like about the 70s and 80s. And when I listen to a lot of modern music today, everybody's trying to use this auto-tune. Everybody's trying to do this. Everyone's using these same chord progressions. This 1, 5, 6, 4 chord progression type of stuff. Everyone's trying to do this auto-tune. Everyone's trying to do this mono sing. You got Cardi B trying to sound like Nicki Minaj. I mean, it's just, it's Cliff had a great, it's called microwave music. So, he said, I'm subpar, but it's fun, but I don't give a shit. Oh, you have to think about some of the popular songwriters out there too that come up with some chord progressions and beats, selling them to popular artists in the genres. So everything on the radio winds up sounding the same, but it's not even the artist coming with it. You know, and so said true, but Caribbean Queen sounds awfully like Billie Jean. I don't know, because you know, you talking about Caribbean Queen, the chord, it's like Caribbean Queen. Then you dance and missed in dreams. Another there's be as one. I don't know, because you listen to Billie Jean. You can actually hear, because there's not a whole lot of, in Caribbean Queen, there's a lot of, when he starts, there's a lot of string like so because Michael Jackson's voice sound different than Billy, what's his name? Billy, I forget his name, Billy. But anyhow, I can distinguish the two, between the two. But if I throw on a lot of modern R&B today, it's really, really getting hard and hard to distinguish who's doing what. That's just my opinion, you know, but I know Caribbean Queen because it sounds totally different, especially in the chord progression. It sounds different than Billie Jean. You know, Billie Jean is definitely famous with the, you know, starts off with the kick and the snare. The bass line, right? Then you hit the horn, those little so But that's just my opinion. But moving on, I was going to go back to that was on the record label stuff. I was trying to get back to the building a commercial studio. But Barncat says Billy Jean intro based on I Can't Go For It. And you know what? And believe it or not, that's actually true because Daryl Hall and John Oates of Hall and Oates had said Michael Jackson actually asked to borrow I Can't Go For That, but he wanted to put his own twist on it. And this is before the Thriller album. He was like, "Can I borrow I Can't Go For That?" So and they didn't really think about it. It wasn't a really big deal, but then that's how Billie Jean was born. Believe it or not. So that's a true statement. They did an interview on that, so that's a very true. It is based on I Can't Go For That. I can't go for that. No, because the bass line is heavy. But back in the 70s, going in the 80s, because of the funk going into disco, going into what we call 80s R&B and all that, bass line was heavy. So being a bass guitar player was a really popular thing then. Even though there was still guitar player and keyboard players, naturally, and horn players, being a bass player, because you can do all the melodic stuff on the bass, is not bland one tone stuff that they do today. It's not that low end like 808 low end bass whole note stuff they're doing. It was actually rhythmic. Like if you go to Chic, let's Chic. Chic, so they would do all that. So Cliff says, I call today's music microwave music. I do too. That's why I thought that was a great analogy. It's crazy how do we have access to any sound in the world at our fingertips, but all the music sounds the same. It's funny that you mentioned that, because like, for example, I got a program on my computer. It's called VIP, right? 5,000 sounds, and everyone's, but I'm gonna tell you the reason why, and I'm not mad at it, but I'll pull this out as an example. This is your issue. This is one of your issues, Cliff, in today's modern music. You got a lot of guys, they don't own board. They'll create on this because this samples, and you can go here and you can splice and cut up samples. And that's believe it or not, that's when you have a lot of people that are making music that are not musicians. There are a lot of people make music that are not musicians. They don't know how to play a real guitar or bass or keys. They don't know how to play. They don't even know how to, but they don't sure know how to. They may have one of these because they might, little simple stuff like this. But they're going to definitely just going to import sounds and sample, and they're going to create beats and sample. That's the MPC, right? That's the studio. But we talk about the Renaissance and all that. So band. Cliff said, but bands with the same core instruments sounded different in the past. If you think about this too, what you're saying, Cliff, true. Think about this. You could take a rock band. Let's take a rock band, right? And you take that rock band, because the guitar player had, 10, 12 different foot pedals. He can make flange sounds, distortion sounds, wah-wah sounds, and on top of that, he can do more than just do chords and scales. He can do all this unique stuff. When Eddie Van Halen was alive, he'd do this thing called tapping, and make this unique effect. But he also could chord. He could also scale. He can do a whole bunch of stuff on the guitar. He would add a chorus and add a reverb and maybe a little flange effect on it, or phasing sound with this pedal. Click, and he would create different sounds on it. and it would just be guitar, bass, and every night he might do some overdubs with some more guitar part, maybe a little keyboard patch in there. But every song, just look at go back to Def Leppard. Listen to how Photograph had maybe a little horn synth stabs in there on Photograph, but then now and then listen to Hysteria. Hysteria. I don't know all the words, but because they knew when to chord and they knew when to do little guitar lead parts, little picking. They know how to do all that to make the song. They know how to break the song down during the verse and then make it sound fuller by adding heavier chords during the chorus and all that, or during the change or during the bridge. That's why you could get all this unique stuff and have just 3 instruments or whatever. And then Mark says a walking bass line. Yeah, that's the bass player. We're talking actual bass player where he's doing, he's playing. So that's what made it. L says MP Studio, can you do a beat and run the outs to the analog board? Yeah, well, with the MPC Studio, of course, it's even on this, you still the software MPC is MPC, I think it's 2.2 or something like now. But you would still do all your beats in MPC, and then you can run the outs through the outs like you would any other DAW. And you can run the outputs. You can do a beat, channel 1, snare on channel 2, hi-hat, sample 4, whatever, all the way up to 24 tracks if you want. And you can run those outputs as long as your audio interface have the outputs. You can route the outputs from your studio, from your software to the outs, and that'll go into like channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4, and then you can do all your mixing and all that and add your compressors and delays just like you would anything else. Yes, you can do that. You just got to set up in the software. Okay. But yeah, that's when it comes to music. But that was, I think reason why I like the 70s, 80s, and 90s the most, because, and I would go back to even hip hop. When hip hop was real hip hop to me, they were a lot more creative even when they took hip hop, because if you go back, I was listening to some old school hip hop, and I was listening to Gang Starr, right? When Guru was alive, right? And it was basically Mass Appeal. I was listening to Mass Appeal. And Mass Appeal from Gang Starr sounds nothing like when I was listening to Black Sheep. Who's the Black Sheep? What's the Black Sheep? So I would listen to that. And then you listen to that, I would listen to Rob Bass. It takes 2 to make things go right. It takes 2 to make it out of sight. Y'all remember that? I don't know if y'all, boo. Yeah. Woo. Yeah, that hip, that was from like 1990, right? 88. Back then, even the hip hop, all the tracks would sound different. I don't know what they're doing today. It's just I kind of go back to what Cliff said about microwave music. It's just when I listen to music, because I don't listen just to R&B or I listen to country, I listen to hip hop, I listen to rock, I listen to jazz, gospel, R&B. You have to, because I like to know what's being current, and of course, especially if it's good. But yeah, it's. I think that, and y'all may agree, I may not agree. I honestly, personally, in my opinion, when the school system start killing the music programs, when they start doing budget cutting, and they killed a lot of programs where kids can learn to play instruments. Because like me, I started off playing a trumpet when I was a kid. Then I switched to tuba, and playing in a band, it led me to wanting to play the keyboards. I started playing keyboards when I was 12. And just music and just being around that music makes you musical. I think that that has become lost. So I think what's happening now is a lot of people that never had that experience are trying to learn the best way they can because they were deprived that. And so there's so much more that could be done musically, but I don't think a lot of people have a true understanding that can be done. So I think what you're noticing today and what Cliff says microwave music is because microwave is more of another way of saying, well, if that person's doing it and it's successful, I'm going to do it. I'm going to copy what they're doing. But also, you got to blame the record labels because the record labels was forcing people to copy. And also, they were like, well, producers said, well, we don't want you to be open-minded and creative. We want you to mimic your stuff because we want guaranteed. This is because of corporates. Now, when record labels were independent, they had a lot more freedom to be creative, to experiment. It's a whole. It's a trickle effect on so many different ways. Oh, Mofalo said, it's all monkey see, monkey do. Cats don't want to be original. That's exactly what I was just saying. I don't think a lot of people know how to be original when you're not musically inclined. When you're musically inclined, your creativity comes out the yin yang because you know. See, when you're a musician, not only do you know what to do or what to play, you know how to play it, and you know why you're playing it, and that's why it's creating the way it's creating the way it's creating because you know what you're playing, you know how you're playing, and you know why you're playing. It's the same thing with singers and anything else. So Mark says that's why I say it's a transition phase for music. I think a lot of skills and creativity have been lost over a decade, but all the cheap recording equipment is allowing people to experiment again. Okay, and I'm gonna go. Let me. And I know exactly what you mean. I made a video a while back, and I was talking about thank God for plugins and clones because all the people that start creating clones say, you know what? I know how we can make this accessible for people that can't afford, especially if you're really into hardware like me. I like hardware. Plugins are really good. I got a lot of them. Plugins are very affordable. You can get your hands on a lot of plugins, but it's something about real gear. It's just me. There's probably some people watching the channel that probably will agree, but it's just me. Plugins versus hardware. Thank God for Warm Audio. Thank God for Heritage Audio. Thank God for Vintech Audio. Thank God for STEM Audio. Thank God for Clark Technic and all these affordable companies that like Art, Behringer, Alesis, even DBX, which is a big name in studio, but DBX out of all that gear is known to be used in all the top name studios. At least DBX is still affordable. So thank God for DBX because you got, I know Universal Audio is a number one studio company, especially their compressors. The 1176, they bought Teletronics now, so the LA2A, and their 610 preamp is amazing stuff. But look how much they charge for that. The same thing, look how much they charge for their plugins. It's just like people can't afford $3,000 here, $3,000 there. I know most people can't. Some people can. Some people actually are very fortunate to be able to say, I can afford Pultex and Universal Audio 1176s, and I got an API console, but most of us can't. And I get it. Sometimes people say, well, you can't afford, maybe you shouldn't be in this business. Let me tell you, there are a lot of talented people that want to do this that just don't have the money if it's feasible. That's not fair. for the people that actually have the talent to do this. So, but thank God that a lot of these clone companies and these companies that make gear that you can afford, and it's like, I go to Warm Audio as an example, and I use Bryce of Warm Audio. Yes, his stuff isn't the cheapest, but it's definitely well in the reach to be able to get something that's going to get you the same quality of the top name stuff like Neve and Universal Audio and all that. He decided, well, I know I can make a Pultec clone that can sound close to a real Pultec. I can make Neve preamps and make it sound like Neve. I can make stuff that sound like like API. And he did. And of course, he started off, I think Warm Audio's only been around for only about 10 years. And now people realize, even the top studios realize, wait a minute, this stuff sounds just as good as the real one, because studios have to buy their gear too. So I realize, wait a minute, this stuff sounds as good as expensive. Why? We can save money by the Warm Audio gear, and we'll get the same quality sound. So they start doing it. And this is what Treasure Owl out of Nashville, Joe Correo bought a lot of Warm Audio gear. Sylvia Massey did an entire big band session with Warm Audio microphones and some Warm Audio preamps and got this amazing sound. And like, wait a minute. She did it. She was teasing Telefunken, like, she had a Telefunken microphone. And she's like, with this one Telefunken microphone, I can get 25 Warm Audios for the price of this one. She was hinting like, that's a no-brainer, right? Someone threw some more comments. Let me put my glasses on. So sometimes I find cheap hardware sounds better than expensive plugins. Yeah, I got to do a thing on plugins. Let me read the next comments. And beer and Trap Vision said, and beer. Let me see. Let me see. Would it be a regret buy if one had the money for it? And the clip says, it's not the gear, it's in the ear. And then, okay, I'm reading the comments. And the beer. Let me see. I think Rock says, I think back in the past, musicians that were all over the hits either had their own sound, they're innovators. Yeah, we're going back to the museum. Yeah, they go back because, back in the day, I'll go back to the gear stuff in a second. Back to the musicians, because everyone was not limited to visualize how they want their music to sound. I think more people are scared of not, if you're on a label, not if you're independent, but if you're on a label, because the labels, a lot of times, if it didn't sound commercial, like I'm talking about the market, like what the market sounds, they weren't going to put it out. And you're limited to that contract. You're restricted to that contract. So that's the downside to being on a record deal, being on a record label, having a record contract. They can control you. And that kills your creativity to experiment. Now you got to go back there and it's harder to make something sound like everybody else if you're trying to mimic someone else and think that you're going to have the same hit, because most people will say, well, you sound like him. You sound like him. Other people accept it, but it gets old after a while listening to everyone coming out sound like the same person that they're mimicking. Or they were session musicians that were masters of their craft and truly understood the true theory behind music. Yes, just what I was saying. Mark says, when you open half of the crap up, though it may make you mad when you look inside a case and realize it's filled with $50 worth of parts, like my WA-76. I don't mean to laugh because I actually like the WA-76, but today you don't have to be either to make music. So, okay, let me go back to the gear and the plugins. Most of the time, reason why gear will always usually sound somewhat better, not in always all cases, but most of the time, because that gear is running across an actual real capacitor. It's running across a real resistor a real transformer is running across some sort of, even if it's just a few electronics, the electronics is affecting the sound. This is why you have, the best way I can describe it is like you take microphone, you buy, let's say you buy an MXL Marshall microphone. And they go to microphoneparts.com and buy an upgrade kit for it, including an upgraded capsule and upgraded capacitors and electronics on the circuit board. 90% of the time, the microphone's going to sound better, because that's what's separating cheap gear from expensive gear is the electronics. It doesn't really care what case it comes in. If you take a Neumann or Telefunken compared to a Marshall or whatever, it's because the Telefunken and the Marshall got better electronics. So if you even the playing field with the electronics, they're going to sound, that's the reason why. But going back to the statement saying, well, it gets mad when you opened up a component like a WA76 and it's got a lot less components. But you also have to look at it like this. How does your WA76 sound? And is it drastically different than a real 1176 that it's going to be noticeable in the mix? And we can't sit there and say, and you can't isolate. Let's say you put that 1176 on a kick or a room or vocals, whatever. Are you going to really hear that distinctive difference when everything's mixed together? You have to ask yourself, be honest. You know, some people will sit there and say, well, yeah, I would hear the difference because you know you're using a 1176. But we got to look at it from a consumer listening that knows nothing about gear point of view. Will they hear the difference? 90% of the time, 99% of the time, they will not. You got studio engineers. I'm talking about pros like Chris Lord-Alge, Dave Pensado, whoever, you know, Bob Clearmountain, cannot tell what piece of gear you used. You know, sometimes they can't. That's why you can go to, sometimes you can listen to music, and you can listen to music, and a lot of times you'll say, I'll go back to here's a good trivial question for you. Go back to Photograph. And when you go to Photograph by Def Leppard, tell me which console they used to record that track. And I guarantee, I'm going to give you a number one. It was not an SSL, and it wasn't a Neve. And I'll leave it at that. And that goes, now you go, people go, wait a minute, it wasn't a Neve or an SSL. It wasn't an API either. So what does that tell you? Are you going to really hear the difference? And I named some of the top 3 console makers out there. SSL, Neve, and API, right? It wasn't none of those when they did Photograph by Def Leppard. So what does that tell you? Let me read some more questions. Let's see. He said, I like it too, but you have to look inside. You know, it's like my Clark Technics. I guarantee it's probably empty shell too. I don't really care. I don't really care. Let's take a Pultec EQ that's got 25 tubes on it, right? Or I can take my Clark Technic Pultec clones it's got tubes in it, but it definitely don't have nowhere near the electronics and transformers and all that. Even though it does have tubes and transformers in it. It does have Midas transformers in it. I don't really care what's inside of it. I just care what it sounds like. And I don't care when I listen to them, as long as they're not drastically different, like this one sounds horrible compared to the real unit. If it does, of course I wouldn't use it. But if they sound extremely close, which they do, it can have one capacitor resistor. I wouldn't care. It can, this could be a Pultec, this little mouse, and they can have an input and output and a button. I don't care. Long as I care what it sounds like. I don't care what it looks like. I just don't. That's just me. Let's see. So DJ Freaknik, that's a cool name. Freaknik. What's up? It's Ableton Professional. All right, now welcome to the channel. Welcome. I don't know how long you've been tuning in, but we're talking about gear. I was talking about commercial studios, then we went to record labels. Now we're talking about gear and musicians. So hello, it says, like the Revive company, you send your old 10-year-old compressor to them and they put new Panasonic capacitors in it and get the color of the sound to change 1%. That's funny. I don't care what it has so much, just that the prices are still way too high for what they make them for. And I'm talking about, are you talking about the clones? Or yeah, well, it's kind of, that's why if you look at Warm Audio's Pultec clone, which is about $799, you look at Clark Technics, which is only $269. And then some people say, well, the Warm Audio sounds better than the Clark Technics. Some people say the Clark Technics sound better than Warm. And because neither one said, well, that doesn't sound as good as the Pultec. Other people say they sound as good as the Pultecs. It's all personal preference. I'm going to go by what Cliff said. It's in the ear. It's really in your ear. And my big thing is this: whether it's a Clark Technic, a Stamp Audio, a Heritage Audio, Warm Audio, an actual real one. It's so many pieces of outboard gear being used in the recording and in the mix. Can you really decipher that? For example, because the Pultec is a EQ. Can you decipher can you really hear that you used a Pultec, or did you use an API EQ? Or did you use a GML EQ? Or did you use a plugin? Or did you use the EQ on the console? Can you really decipher that in a mix when you got, let's say you use the Pultec on the bass, but there's also strings, there's horns, there's guitars, there's keyboards, there's drums, there's EQ on bus channels and compressors on buses. Then there's the master bus, and it has an EQ and a master bus compressor going on it and all that. Can you really go back and decipher that Pultec was used on a kick drum on channel 1? Probably not. So whether you use the Warm Audio or the Pultec or even the Clark Technic or whatever you used on that one particular. Now, there are going to be some people say, well, some people that would say no clone is going to be as good as the real original. And he said, all this may not make a difference individually, but collectively, it can make a difference. Some people will argue that it can make a difference in an overall collective mix. That, once again, how can you really say that? Because not everyone listens to sounds or music on the same speaker sources. Like, I got a pair of Cerwin Vegas here, and I got a set of Infinities speakers with a stereo rack. So when I listen to music, I listen to that. But not everyone listening to that. Some people are just going to listen to their music just on their speakerphone on their phone. And you and I know the speaker on your phone, it's not going to sound nowhere near like an actual real stereo system. It's going to sound mid-rangey. You're not going to really hear any low end, no kick, no fullness, because the speaker's tiny. So some people listen to, you'll hear a lot more stuff collectively with your buds. Like if you have a pair of earbuds, or even a set of headphones, you'll hear more stuff, but you still won't hear it to the depth like listening to a pair of Cerwin Vegas or Pioneers or something like JVCs, because that's just the way speakers work. Same thing with car stereo systems. Some people, when they put a car stereo system in their car, they just have tweeters and sub. They don't install mid-range speakers or woofers. They just add tweeters and a sub. So they're missing so much of the frequency range. Is missing. It sounds like it's there, but there's no depth or clarity there and then on top of that, a lot of people, sometimes you'd be surprised when people do car installs, they don't really think about the acoustics of inside of a car. They'll just put a pair of tweeters on the pillars, maybe some subs in the trunk, and maybe a pair of woofers on the back deck, and that's it. They don't think about how the acoustic effect with the door, the panels, and all. They don't think, no one ever thinks acoustics on car stereos. And you can listen stuff in your car, and they'll sound totally different than listening to you on your phone versus listen to you on your studio monitors. Because some people listen to studio monitors with speakers and the sub. Some people just listen with just the speakers. That's going to change the listening experience. So with all that being said, when you listen to this stuff, can you really decipher a Clark Technic or Warm Audio used on a kick? It depends on when you're listening through a pair of, you can't. So let me read a few more of the comments. And you know, Cliff says, get a point. Did the carpenter use a $300 hammer to build the house or a $30 hammer? The question is, did he? And the thing is, I don't really care if and y'all probably like me. I don't care if he used a $300 or a $30 hammer, because most of us don't care. I just care if the house put together properly. You know, if a $30 hammer gets the job done, and that's the point of what he's saying. Did a $30 hammer? The thing is, the only thing with a $300 hammer is the $30 hammer might be more susceptible to break when you're constantly using it constantly. A $30 hammer might not break when you're only using it sparingly, but when you're constantly using it time and time again, over and over and over again, it might eventually break. That's the thing with cheap tools. But now, sometimes what we're saying with the clones is that the clones can actually get you there without breaking the bank. Here's the thing, and I'll use this analogy. Let's say I use my Clark Technic and it only cost me $300, right? Let's say Universal Audio, which is about $3,000, right? Clark Technic, $300. Universal, $3,000, right? Let's say the Clark Technic is working great. All of a sudden, it breaks. I can still go buy 2 or 3 more Clark Technics, get 3 or 4 for about $900 to $1,200. One break, I just pull it out, swap it, put another one in. Good to go, right? Some people say, well, they don't believe in why would you buy a keyboard and have to keep replacing them? Just buy the Universal Audio 1176. Here's one thing I do know about expensive gear. Under heavy uses, it also breaks. They do break under heavy use. But if your Universal Audio 1176 break, $3,000, guess what? That's enough $3,000 to replace it. That's $6,000. How many Clark Technics can you buy for $6,000? So it's a matter of how you look at it. It's really a matter of how to look at it. A lot of times it's cheaper to replace the clone if it breaks than it is to buy what it's cloning. It's a matter of how you look at it. Cliff says all matters how the oh yeah, Mark said it's the way plugins where half of them have an analog switch, and you realize after having 10 of their plugins in a mix and the switch is on, sounds like you recorded TV station. I'm gonna tell you one thing too. I'm gonna say about plugins. This is the misconception about plugins that the plugin companies don't tell people. Plugins are only effective if your PC or your Mac is powerful enough. This is the reason why, because they're coded to use the maximum amount of RAM and resources. They're coded, that's what makes plugin sound the most effective. This is why you have to be careful. For example, acoustic audio plugins, in my opinion, are some of the most realistic sounding plugins on when it comes to modeling gear, but they are resource heavy. You have to think about it when it comes to plugins. Of course, I'm gonna go back to Cliff. I'm gonna answer Cliff right quick. Cliff said all that matters how nice the house, how the house is nice. How nice is the house? Basically, He don't really care if you build it with a $300 hammer or a $30 hammer. As long as the house is nice and it's built well. I'm the same way. Unfortunately, with modern houses, they're cheap. This is why they get taken down in tornadoes. An AF2 tornado will wipe out a modern house versus the old school houses where they were using 4x4s, and if you opened up, you cracked the wall. They had more wall inside of it, and there's walls inside of walls, and they were using instead of, I think the joists and the supports were only every 6 inches was a joist. Now modern houses, you might every 8 feet apart is a joist. Like you can punch through a wall. All you got is siding and sheetrock. That's the only bad thing about modern houses. That's why they can put a house together in 5 minutes compared to you go back to the 1930s. 1930s. That's why it took an EF tornado. Yeah, you might have some roof damage, but it was rebuildable. Now most modern houses are built, I would say, that from the 90s up, tornado flatline a neighborhood. And I feel bad because my house was built in 99, and it's one of those modern houses. I can probably punch a hole. It's just, and believe it or not, older houses are actually ideal for if you want to build a home recording studio because they're sturdy. The only downside about my older houses was if you take an older 1920, you have to bring the electricity code up the code. That's the only most expensive because they didn't have codes like they do now, fire codes for electricity and all that. But anyhow, now, it says, does the Clark sound close to a real Pultec? I do. That's why I have two of them. You look over mine, I don't know if you can see it. Two of them. Because people know about me. If I have one unit, I only buy one at a time. If I like it, I'll buy a second one. That's how I am. If I don't like it, I'm not buying another one. So if I have something with that, if you see I do a studio tour and I have two, that tell you. It's like with my Altron, these are Neve preamp. These are basic Neve preamps. I bought one. People was waiting for me to actually do an audio test. I liked it so much, I bought a second one. That's all I can tell you. Because sometimes when I do these, if I do audio tests like most people do on these videos, the people's ears are subjective. Some people are just going to find a reason not to like it, even if you did an audio test. They're like, that doesn't sound as good as Neve. There's just going to be people like that. It's like some people out there will swear warm audio don't sound good like Neves or API. They just don't. That's just people out there. They're just gear snobs out there. So that's just the way it is, For me, I kind of it's the test is in your ear. Do you sound good? Because there are a lot of crappy made music, and this was really especially done in a lot of old school hip hop stuff where they just sample with bad records and all that. They just sample. It wasn't really designed to put the way we do it with like real musicians. But it sounded good enough to listen to. It's really based on your audience. But let me see. George says, I think the new place for our studios is in the post-production. Yeah, I guess now because we're talking mixing. We're talking about the mixing and the mastering. And plugins can really be effective for that as well. But I never got a chance to finish my point on the plugins. You have to think of plugin like anything else. Plugins are nothing but emulation software. The first thing you think of is, well, I'm going to tell you, one of the problems is if you're not familiar with the real gear and you start using plugins, you probably are not going to be using the plugins properly either if you have no experience and training on it, because plugins are modeled to work like real pieces of gear. But if you got no experiences on the real piece of gear, unless you find a right, sometimes you can get the manual, and the manual will tell you how to use it. But most of the time it's just experience, because plugins, you got to remember plugins, when you're dealing with a Mac or PC, there is no tubes. There's no transformers. There's no op amps. There's no capacitors or resistors to affect the signal. There's nothing like that. It's just coding, and the way it's coding, sometimes the manipulation, you can think you're compressing something, but they have to code it, and you're really EQing it the way to make it sound like it's compressing. It's just the way the coding works, the software, to make it sound like a compressor. They've gotten really good at it because the computers, 64-bit systems, can process it better than the old 32-bit. But overall, you can have 100 plugins. It's still nothing. There's nothing. And this is why Real Gear works. The downside to Real Gear is usually we're limited to just 1, 2, 3 pieces of gear. When a plugin, you can have 100 of it, because all you got to do is just duplicate it. Just insert it and duplicate it. And then every plugin can work differently, but it's all based on the power of your PC or Mac. Because once you start running a lot of plugins, you look at that CPU usage, and it'll start because your CPU still has to run the RAM, the operating system, the sound card, the video card, and other software that's running in the software, security systems. And you have to be with the internet now. A lot of times you would try to run a standalone, but you got to be on the internet because of some of these plugins want you to use iLok, and they need to see the iLok for them to unlock the plugin. It's just, too many security variables on that. But anyhow, George said there's a studio 10 minutes away from me. They have an API legacy. Nice. 2 S6s. I'm surprised they're still in business. That was the initial start of the actual live stream I'm doing. Is it worth really opening up a commercial studio? Because it's nice. The API legacy, having the API legacy, 1176s, Pultec EQs, LA2As, Telefunken, Neumann microphones, you name it, AKG C414s, Sennheiser 421s, Royer 121s. We're talking all the Need 1073, 1081, 1084s, API 550s, 558s, 550Bs, API 5500s, Need 33609 compressor, and SSL bus compressor. We're talking hundreds of thousands. That's just in one control room. You got a little live room with thousands of dollars worth of high-end cable and grounding. The star ground system for the, the paneling, the diffusers, they probably cost them millions of dollars just to build it. Yet clients, going back to the 80s and 90s, where record labels, because it was $1 billion business from CD sales, tape sales, cassette sales. We're talking $500,000 advances to give these artists to go to those studios. The studios made a lot of money. They could charge $3,000, $500 to $5,000 a day. They could do that. But now with the internet, lots of different DAWs, plugins, audio interfaces are inexpensive now. Studio monitors are inexpensive now. Software is inexpensive. You can get plugin packages. You can do plugin subscriptions, DAWs. Everyone's doing this in their homes. Most people just like, yeah, studios are nice, but I'm not paying $5,000 a day. Made these studios say, you know what? I got to start closing my doors because I can't make the money because I have too much overhead. Like Cliff said, overhead. You got all that staff, you got maintenance crews, studio managers, engineers, maintenance crews, trying to rent the studios out to different engineers and trying to get clients. And most people like, I was $500 an hour. Now I'm $150 an hour. Now I'm $100 an hour. Now I'm $50 an hour. They still can't get clients because everybody's like, you know what? I'll just go get like Cakewalk. I got a PC. Let me go Cakewalk. Cakewalk is free. Free is always going to attract, period. whether it's good or not. Free is always going to attract. Oh man, here's some free plugins. I can go get a whole bunch of free plugins and free cakewalk. Go buy me a $200 interface, $200 microphone, pair of $200 monitors, some headphones. You know, you can start a studio on not less than $1,000. And it's all based on how good you are with your skills. The only downside is there's some people that can start a studio for $1,000 and make this stuff sound like you did it in a top line studio. Other people can go get the same amount of money and they sound like they need some help because they just don't know. They don't have the experience. So, as he says, but ad work keeps them afloat. Yeah, because there's always going to be lots of people that's still going to want to go and pay for a recording studio because it's something that we're used to. It's like the electric car. Electric cars are starting to get more and more, but it's still going to be gasoline cars out there. Mark says, do you have any 500 series gear or used anyway? You know, I don't have any 500 series, but I wish I invested in 500 series because 500 series, even the top name brands out there, are way more affordable than buying the 19-inch rack units. 500 series has become extremely popular. So yeah, you're going to start seeing 500 series pop up in my racks. I don't have any, but yes, they have 500 series as an excellent investment. You can get a lot of gear, a lot more affordable with 500 series. Okay. Cliff says, if I've never used a Pultec, how can I judge if the clone is close? You can actually rent them, believe it or not. Places like Blackbird, if you're in Tennessee, Nashville, will rent out Pultecs. I think he rents out a Pultec $75 a day or something like that. It might be $50 a day. He'll let you rent it, a real Pultec for $50 because he's got ridiculous amount of outboard gear that he rents. And a lot of people are renting out their gear. They're making money that way. I just rent it out to you. So what you do is you can rent it. And then you can have your Clark Technic or your Warm Audio or whatever gear you got, or even your plug-in, and you can A/B them. And I always say, now here's the thing: when you're renting, whether it's a Pultec, a Universal 1176, or LA2A or whatever, be warned. I'm just warning you. A lot of times when you do A/B it and the real unit sounds just a tad bit better, most of the time you're going to want it because it's going to sound a little bit better. My thing is, well, unfortunately, here's the stickler. When Trav said, he said, rent and don't bring it back, laughing out loud, right? I'm just joking. The thing is, yeah, because what they'll do is you rent it for $50, but they put a $3,000 hold on your card or whatever the price of the unit is. They have your credit card information. So if you don't bring it back, they're going to just charge you the full amount of the unit. So that's why you got to be careful when you rent it. So, because, a lot of times people don't have enough, even though, I got $50 cash. Now they won't, a lot of times they won't rent with the cash. They want you to have card with enough balance that it will. So it's like if you have $5,000 in your bank, they want you to have, so you can rent it for that very reason, because there are people that have done that. It's like, I'm just not going to, you know what? It's a $100 unit, $3,000. I'm not going to rent it. I'm not going to bring it back. And he said, oh, and they think they're being slick, right? I just, they put $100. They don't see the $3,000 hold. Like, come back and I kept it. You're like, man, my bank account, I can't pay my rent, man. My $3,000 is gone. Yeah, they took it because you didn't bring it back. There's a reason why, it's like a rental car. You rent a car, rent a car $39 a day, but they got your credit card information. So if you don't bring that car back, first of all, they're gonna put an APB for a stolen car, but that could be a nightmare. But that's the reason why they do that. So they're thinking well ahead of you. So going back to the commercial studio, I want to end on the commercial studio note. I want to on the commercial studio stuff. I think if you're going to start a commercial studio, it may not be worth. I think you had to do it in the 80s and 70s because that's the only way you could do it. I think today, to spend that kind of money to do a commercial studio, it may not be worth it. I think John McBride today, yeah, he was on to something with Blackbird Studios 20-something years ago. But now he might be, I think he's kind of, you can see it in his face when they're doing interviews, how much he spent. I think it's 40 million or something. It's millions. He's like, man, oh man, I don't know now. Yeah, because he's not getting the clients. It's Blackbird's a little empty now. I think, yeah, Blackbird's a little empty. I don't have OBS Studio software. I went down to Blackbird. I went to Berry Hill a while back. I think it's on my phone. I took pictures of the neighborhood. Yeah. So I don't know where it's at, but I'll worry about it later. But anyhow, I'm really not that far from Nashville. So I went to Berry Hill. And they didn't have in that neighborhood, like there's a lot of recording studios, and it ain't like there's a whole lot of traffic, just not, so oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is Blackbird. I don't know if y'all can see it on my phone. I don't know if the phone's gonna. That's outside of Blackbird Recording Studios in Nashville. Blackbird is like one of the biggest recording studios in Nashville. So, but so let me see. Let me read some more questions. Oh, Mark says that's why you have to sell your services online. Yeah, that's all marketing. Yep, yeah, that's marketing. George says, yeah, I don't think that Blackbird has been profitable until they started their school. Yep, because he had to. He had to because people just aren't paying $5,000 a day anymore. They just not. And this is probably why you can start seeing a lot. One of the biggest things that you'll start to see being killed in a purchase for a recording studio are large format consoles. Because most people are like, well, I can't afford a $500,000 SSL. That's why you start seeing these SSLs, these older SSLs use $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 now. They were $500,000 to $1 million. You don't see them that much no more because they're expensive. They're the most expensive piece in your studio is the console. Excuse me. Yeah, I don't think. Leroy, okay, welcome, Leroy, and welcome to the channel. Missed if I didn't get a chance to introduce you. He said, I run a hybrid setup, an SSL6 with some warm hardware, warm Pultec, warm 2A. Honestly, it ain't the wand, it's the magician. People is focused too much on equipment and plugins. People should learn the technique. And that's the truth with anything. It's kind of like it doesn't matter if you have an SSL, an API, and Neve. You can have Pultec, you can have all the top name gear, you can have clones. The source has to sound good. The singer, the musician, the instruments they're using has to. Or you're gonna find yourself like frustrated recording that person. Okay. And the last thing he says are people that actually own Pro Studio. Trap says, are people that actually own Pro Studio music makers themselves, or are they just investing in these Pro Studios for profit? Both. Pretty much both. You got some people that are musicians, and there are other people that just aren't a musician at all. So, and having workers to run the studio for them, they do. There are people like Capitol. There are people that run the studio, but they hire engineers and in-house people to do stuff. They do. And that's like anything else, any business. There are a lot of businesses that will hire people to do it for them, even though they don't know how to do it themselves. There's truck driving companies that have truck drivers that have years of experience, but the person that owns the truck company don't know anything about it. A good example. If you remember the show, remember the TV show called Cheers, when it first started off. The coach, he died during that season. The guy used to be called the coach when it first came out. He was the owner of the bar, but he was also a bartender. But then later on, when they brought the other, forget her name, that started running the bar, she was not a bartender, but she owned the bar. So Sam, everyone knows Sam, the main bartender. He was the main bartender. He ran the bar. He did all the mixing the drinks. She just ran the bar as a business, but she wasn't a bartender. So that's the same thing with recording studio. You can build your, if you got money, you can buy all the gear, all the equipment, and then you can hire people to run it for you. That happens all the time. So and he said only people with Top Gear say that. I'm talking about he's talking about when he said it it's not equipment. People should learn the technique. I'm gonna leave that alone. I'm not gonna get into that discussion. So with all that being said, going back what I was initially saying about the commercial studio, look at the cost. Look at the cost. Is opening a commercial studio worth the cost? If you ever get a chance to weigh in on what it takes to build the studio, and then look at what it's going to take to run it and maintain it, is it worth it? Same thing with a record label. Is it worth a record label? Is it worth the cost? That would probably be in anything, is it worth the cost? Now, you can actually do well, in my opinion, and for example, you can do well with the clones, but there's just going to be producers and gear snobs out there that is going to be like, I don't want to rent your studio unless you got the real gear. Because it's just people are worried that the clones are going to break. I really think that's, and my thing is, how can you get mad at a person that have a clone that might break when you have real gear, like an SSL, like I have a channel out that can break? And we're talking an SSL or a Neve or an API, and they break. Are you going to be mad then? See, I don't know. So, let's see. Oh, people underestimate, mic placement and room treatment. Well, that's going to be a different video on acoustic treatment, because that could go on for another hour on the room treatment. It really, and I think we all made this mistake. I know I made this mistake. Knowing what I know now, I would definitely invest in the room treatment first. Then I would invest in gear and gear placement and studio monitor placement second, because you got to place the gear in an acoustically treated room. And then third, and then it would be a big gear. And fourth, I would definitely do a lot more clones and 500 series. 5, I'm not going to sit there and say with DAWs and plugins, because I still would go the same route with the DAW and plugins that I have. But I definitely would consider that. Also, I would definitely consider the house where I'm going to do this at first. So let me take that back. The house where I'm going to do this first, room treatment and acoustics, talking about diffusers, panels, and all that. Second, then gear and gear placement and monitors. And certain things I would just sacrifice to get, like Atom speakers or whatever. Microphones, if I can find great deals on microphones, for sure. And just look for gear. Just, you don't always have to buy expensive gear new. There are always sometimes some great deal on some used gear. Or on used gear that is, I'm talking the big name stuff. Sometimes there's a good deal out there on that. It's just timing. I would definitely consider how I can still try to make my home recording studio as much as a commercial as possible, but still keep it in my home. So that's what I would do. But that's how I look at it. So let me read a few more questions, and then I'm gonna have to go ahead and close out because we've been going on 1 hour and 36 minutes. Leroy says Genelec SAM system for people that can't afford acoustic room treatments. Okay, Genelec SAM systems. I'm about to check that out. I'm not familiar with them, so I'm gonna check them out. Okay. And Trap says I got my monitors in the center of the garage. No room treatment or panel cuts. It's fine. It's a fire hazard. Okay. And they were saying, at least for monitoring. And of course, Trap says, but I have a lot of stuff in here, so I think it might be room treatment itself. So that boils down to, I think a lot of times what we'll do, and I'll end on this, I think a lot of times we think after the fact. We'll have a room or whatever. It won't be completely empty. It will be like a garage or a bedroom or an attic or basement that used to be used for a garage. You park your car in there, or an attic where you store stuff, or your basement where you store stuff. Maybe you do your laundry or whatever, or a bedroom where it used to be a bedroom with bedroom gear stuff in it. Then you're like, you know what? I can turn this into a studio. And you start thinking, how can I turn this into a studio? They start moving stuff out. We never really look at an empty room and say, let me get this room treated purposely. I think none of us do that. That's why I said if I would do it all over again, I would look at an empty room or find a way to make something work where it's purposely going to be a studio. Because even this room in here didn't start off like this. It didn't. So, I'll say SAM system reads the room and corrects the output corrects the output for any situation. Okay, like I said, I'm not familiar with Genelec SAM system, so I'm about to check them out. So, with all that being said, I really do appreciate everyone tuning in for this particular live chat. This is usually goes this one a lot longer than I normally like to do on these live chats, but it's always good to interact with everybody. I really do appreciate everyone tuning in. I like everyone's input and comments. I really do appreciate y'all. And next, I'm gonna really get in depth with hardware and plugins probably on the next video, on the next live chat, because that is a really that's man, that's you can go back and forth, and you're gonna get a lot of people that's gonna go back and forth between the hardware and the plugin. So once again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I'm gonna have to go ahead and tune out. And we'll see you on the next one. I get a chance to make this video a couple weeks before because I had to deal with a death in the family. So I had to deal with that, and of course some other stuff that come up. So, but it's always great for everyone tuning in. I really do appreciate y'all, and we're going to see you in the next one. And other than that, appreciate y'all. I really do. Y'all have a great one.